Hello and welcome to the first initial podcast with A and K for the Wheel of Time Book 1, where we will be going through chapter by chapter to analyse this book from an entertainment point of view, as well as just pointing out some things that we found interesting, and to provide some honest and open commentary on this book. The reason that we're doing this podcast is for a couple of reasons. We wanted to pick a book that neither of us had read, or a book series that neither of us had read, but we both had been interested in reading for quite some time, and a couple of friends of ours have told us that it's a good book series and certainly worth a read. So we wanted, and it also, we are enjoying it. I mean, we've only read the first chapter so far. The prologue on the first chapter so far, and we look forward to kind of sharing our adventures or our enjoyment of this book series with those people who choose to listen to this. For those, just as an FYI, if you do want to leave any commentaries or feedback about this podcast, you're welcome to contact us. I'm available on Twitter at Warrior346, and also available on by email at warrior346@yahoo.com. We are welcome to any and all comments and feedback. Please try and keep it positive. If there are anything that you want us to change or improve about the podcast, please also let us know, and we'll see what we can do to adapt. So, to start with, this is Wheel of Time. The first book is entitled Eye of the World, and it is by Robert Jordan. And we'll start by discussing the prologue. So, first of all, what did you think about Kay in relation to the first part that you've read so far?
Well, in terms of the prologue, he obviously leaves a lot of mystery. I think that for me personally, I enjoy books that have a more detailed explanation about the world around them. So while there's a lot, and I do like mystery, but I also like the fact that the world's slightly explained, if not entirely explained. For example, in like the Harry Potter books, obviously you get that it's a wizarding world and that he's a baby. You get what I mean? Like when you first read the first chapter, you know that he's survived and that he was in a wizarding family. So you get a sort of a slight background. With this one here, while that a tragedy has occurred, and obviously the person who's done it, who obviously happens to be
Luz Telemon.
Yes, he doesn't realise that he was actually the person who's committed the tragedy. You don't exactly know what it was he exactly did, although I assume it has something to do with his lightning powers, although how he has those powers, I have no idea. How he's able to turn himself into a mountain.
Jumping ahead a little bit, as far as just to kind of set the scene for people who may not necessarily have read the book, because we'll start off in, I'm assuming, a dining room or some kind of room in
the palace.
Yeah, some kind of room in a palace, and we see this guy who's obviously lost his mind, calling for his wife, stepping over who we later find out is her dead body, constantly calling out for her and trying to find her. Without any kind of sense in terms of what's going on, but there's all these signs of carnage. Many his wife, among other dead bodies, are around. And then not too long after that, another person teleports into the room, kind of steps through a portal of some kind. And it's this person who obviously knows Telamon doesn't, but Telamon doesn't recognize him at first, and it's kind of says, we have a guest, and you want to be careful of was talking to my wife, because she'll talk your ear off and get you to spill all your secrets and all that kind of stuff. And it's not until this person says, look, I'm going to help you remember who you are and remember what you've done. And it's like, oh. And he realizes who this person is that came to the portal is otherwise known as the Betrayer of Hope. And at first, Telamon blames the betrayer for what happened to his family, before he realizes he did it himself. And he then creates his own portal, teleports to miscellaneous elsewhere, and sucks in so much power into himself out of grief and rage out of what he's out of his own actions, of killing his own family, that he ends up becoming his own island, essentially. And that there is, in a nutshell, a summary of
the
prologue. So, anyway, just so that there's some context to some of these comments that we're going to be making.
There's also a lot of reference to the light. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a religious thing, because he screams out, light, forgive me. And there's also a bit of a hint of a pride thing happening there, because the betrayer, as he likes to be called, mentions that it was because of his pride that he had believed that man could match the creator, and as a result he had been broken, and that his pride had been his undoing, I guess, which is why Liena was killed, essentially, and that he'd only had himself to blame for it. So you don't get, that's the only hint of in the prologue of what you get about something obviously occurring. There's not much in the way of exactly how or what brought him to
very little context
to that state of madness, or why he would even do it. I mean, clearly he had to have been deranged to murder his own wife and children and beloved servants, it even mentions, and things like that. So,
or even or if it was just some kind of tragic accident with him trying to achieve these heights of power. I mean, one thing I'll admit to being my own class of nerd. I do like Star Trek, I like Star Wars. In fact, if you like Star Trek, I do have another podcast that I'm doing as well, which you're welcome to kind of look up if you want to, but just look up Abe's complete commentary, and you'll complete Star Trek commentary, and you should find it easily enough. But anyway, the one theme that I find constant in a lot of different books and movies and whatnot is that all who gain power are afraid to lose it, and in gaining that power, regardless of the nobility of the reasons, there are always people who get trodden underfoot, and there's always a price. One of my kind of personal favorites with this is the journey of Anakin Skywalker into who turns into Darth Vader in Star Wars, because the third movie, Revenge of the Sith, is all about how he's having visions about his wife, Padme, dying in childbirth, and he's trying to gain all this power to save her from dying, because he's afraid to lose her. when in the end it's his own actions that prove to be the cause of her death, because he ends up doing things that she can't accept. And I'm curious to see if it's a similar path that we, for Telamon here, that if he was trying to gain control of some kind of power to be this ultimate power, to be almost godlike, that caused this situation to occur. But I guess we'll find that out in later chapters. Another thing which I found interesting was that even after he had turned himself into a mountain, that the betrayer who followed him somehow to wherever he went, at least I think it was the betrayer.
Yes.
Yeah. That he said that, we've only just begun.
Which made me question about whether or not, I mean, obviously they're not necessarily wizards, but maybe eternal gods or demigods or something like that. There's no... This is what I'm talking about with the whole context thing. There's nothing that really explains what they are.
They seem to exist outside of time.
Yes.
Somehow. Because there are...
Well, it's not just time. It's obviously physical body too, because he turns into a mountain.
No, fair point. But there's also... there are also comments there to, this has been going on not just for the past 10 years, but since the beginning of time.
Yes, because he talks about the two sides, essentially. And that... and there's also reference, that he also does reference, that if he had simply done what the Dark Lord... There is a Dark Lord in here.
Yes.
If he had simply done what he'd asked, he would not be in this predicament either. I mean, which leads you to sort of believe, well, maybe this Dark Lord had done something to trick him.
Or to damage the relationship between that they had.
Yes. Into doing this destruction that he's caused his kingdom. I'd imagine he's some sort of a king, because he was looking around the palace, right? And
or a lord or a knight, or definitely someone in
charge,
some form of power position. Yeah, I would agree.
Because he's, it seems more kingly than anything else, because he's definitely regal and royal in his delusion about, looking at his form in his state of dress, and he's very refined.
It does have that aspect, I suppose.
Yeah. It does when he's describing his clothing. It's very refined, obviously damaged and tattered from all of the blood and gore and violence, but it's there. So it's definitely got to be a king of some kind. Definitely someone of importance.
Or someone of class.
Yes.
No, because that's another thing which hasn't... granted, this is just a prologue, and all a prologue is meant to do is just kind of whet your appetite, give you some kind of event that will later be explained, but does get the reader curious,
intrigued.
Yeah,
and it does get you intrigued. It's just that and he's also referenced as the dragon.
Yeah, there's a Telamon, by the way.
There's a Telamon, yeah. And it's just, it's interesting, but it doesn't give you context as to how he's able to turn himself into a mountain or why. And the Wheel of Time doesn't seem to be explained well. I mean, obviously, the whole books are based on this Wheel of Time thing, but it's there's no context or explanation.
Well, again, you want to hint at it. You don't want to do the big reveal of it in the first 2 pages of the book, because that would make the rest of the book kind of pointless, possibly. But yeah, I agree that I do like the way that this is done. I mean, there's in some respects, there is a big event, 2 big events, a slaughter followed by a transformation.
Yes.
And and there are a million unanswered questions, which there's still plenty of book to explain, in terms of how it occurred, what led up to this event, what happened afterwards, what happens to is there a way
For Telamon to turn back
human
from a mountain. Yeah. Or even if he is human.
Or-
I mean, like, he obviously has features that describe him as human, but clearly,
Well,
unless
who knows? Maybe he's essentially like Gandalf, or the Astari
a
from
wizard.
From the Tolkien series, because they weren't they were in human form, but they were certainly much more than that.
Yes.
Um,
Which is why I said even if he is even human, I mean, he has human
characteristics.
definitely, but yeah, he's not described as a basic human, clearly, in this prologue. I do like the way it's, it ends with the then he was gone and the mountain and the island stood alone waiting. So kind of gives you a sense that the mountain is still, in a way, alive and active and watching.
And a part of the story.
Yes, and I don't know about the possibility of him being able to influence. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how much influence he would be able to have as a mountain, but it kind of gives you that sort of a feel. He's waiting, so obviously he has some form of awareness. From that statement, although it just could be something pretty that he decided to write. That's what
There's another side to this too. With a lot of the shows that I watch, it goes into there's a phrase which I have come to adore so very, very much, and that is, I hate temporal mechanics. And there's a part of me, because not having read these books before, as an FYI, we are both reading this book fresh. We
decided we didn't want to. We wanted to do a book together, but we didn't want to do a book that both of us have read because we were concerned about jumping ahead. And we were also concerned about, several times we've had discussions about books, and Abe or myself will reference something that's happened in the book, and it will be in a totally different book.
Section of the book.
Or section of the book, yeah. And we didn't want to do that based on our memory. But there was
spoiler alert, as an FYI, spoiler alert in relation to the 7th Harry Potter book, I think it is. For those who haven't read it, feel free to skip ahead 30 seconds into this podcast. But I think I apparently spoiled Dobby's death.
Yes.
In the Harry Potter series. I don't recall doing that, but still.
He had asked where I was at, obviously, when I was reading it for the first time, and said, and he's gone, so you know Dobby's dead. And I'm like, well, no, I didn't actually, but thank you for letting me know. So we didn't want that. We didn't want that occurring.
Not in this podcast series, anyway.
And then there was the idea of one of us having read the books, but the other one, not having read. And obviously, with the concern was that one of us would spoil something for the person. So,
for the other.
Yes. So we thought, well, let's start afresh with a book that neither one of us has read, and that way we don't have that risk. And there has been an agreement that neither one of us is allowed to read ahead.
In fact, what we're actually doing with this is we've downloaded it from Audible, and prior to recording these podcast episodes that we'll be doing, we'll be listening to it together, or reading the chapters together, and after we've finished listening to it or reading it, we'll then record the next one of these. As far as the anyway, to get back to the point of that I was initially making in terms of the whole temporal mechanics thing, I am admittedly a little concerned that this is going to be one of those books where there's going to be multiple timelines that happen. It is called the Wheel of Time, and wheels do go both ways. You can wheel something forward and you can wheel something backward, and if you wheel something backward, it can then go along a different track.
There's also a mention of a prophecy at the end of the prologue too. The shadow of the mountain almost reached the island. It lay dark across the land like an ominous hand of prophecy. And I do remember reading that there's a prophecy of the dragon's return, or at least they're praying for his return, and that he will return, kind of thing. So this event is obviously known in the history of the Wheel of Time.
Or the world that's in.
Of the world that it's in. Yeah, you don't even know the name of the world. That's the thing. This is what I'm saying. And obviously it's impacted the world enough for there to be a prophecy about the return of the dragon. Obviously, Telammon's the dragon person who's to return. But yeah, it's interesting.
It's a good start. Overall, it is a good start. I mean, I do agree that there were some details that could have been included. For example, Telamon had returned to his castle in such and such a place. It's a simple line like that, so we've got
so you got a context of
location.
Where. Yeah.
And just some other kind of basic. Just some other basic details that could have been included that no doubt we'll find out in later chapters as well. I'm also I'm just kind of hoping that for anyone who's ever watched say the Back to the Future series, trilogy, and there's a Big Bang episode
where they explain it.
Not brought.
Yeah, it was a pretty funny episode.
I'm begging in some respects this not to go into that kind of detail, because that'll give me a headache. It'll be a fun headache.
Amusing, though.
I know it'll be a fun headache. Don't get me wrong, but still, it's one of those things that I've got a love-hate relationship with those with those kinds of things. So we'll see how we go. But yeah, so that there is essentially the prologue and our first exploration into in this world. There's just one other, just two other last comments that that I want to make, and then I'll let Kylie, Kay say some closing comments as well if she wishes. Mine just being that I do believe there will be several religious inferences here. I mean, there's references to the light and the dark, which is often seen as kind of good and evil, or heaven and hell, kind of God and the devil. Lots of connotations like that could be made. We'll see to what level this book takes it. And the other is that this has been a good start to to the book, and I am looking forward to to seeing what happens next, or what happened before, as the case may be.
Maybe, yeah.
This has been A and
K.
Thank you. We thank you for listening. To our first initial podcast. Once again, we are open to any comments or thoughts on our first episode, and any ongoing episodes that we plan to be doing. Please feel free to send those through either on my Twitter feed, which is at warrior346, or to my email address, warrior346@yahoo.com. Thank you, and may you always live eternally.